My name is Krishna Vavilala. I'm interviewing today Mr. Atul Kothari and his wife Rita Kothari, and they are both from India, and they are long-term historians. And this interview is particularly will be for the oral history project of the Indo-American community, and this interview will be archived in the Houston Public Library's digital archives for posterity. So, Mr. Kothari, it is a privilege for having you and your wife, Rita ji. So let us get started and give us some background information about your life in India before you start.
Yeah, before we get started, I won't call you Mr. Vavilala, so please, we are good friends, so please refer to me as Atul rather than Mr.
Is that
Kothari.
right? Okay, sure.
I will appreciate it. Yeah, I was born in Porbandar in 1951, and I was raised in Ahmedabad. And when I was about 10 or 11 years old, for some reason my dad asked me to take some competitive exam, and I had no idea what it was, but as it turns out it was for the admission to the Sainik school Jamnagar, which is the military school government has established in each state. And fortunately I passed, and then we packed our bags, went to the military school, and I can say proudly that was one of the best period of my life. We were treated like prince, and our dorms were on the seashore, which was donated by Jam Saab of the Jamnagar, and it was wonderful. I was there for about 4.5 to 5.5 years, and we got really good training in terms of physical training, discipline, lovely education that very few could afford at the time. Our only condition was that upon completion of our matriculation, we had to sit for the Services Selection Board written exam. And if we passed, then we had to go to the Services Selection Board to be interviewed to see if we had officer capabilities to enter the Indian Armed Forces. So fortunately I did pass. I went there for the SSB interview. Fortunately I passed through that as well, and I was excited to join the armed forces, but before that we had to undergo a medical examination, and normally it's for 3 days, and in my case it took 7 days, and at the end of the 7 days they called me on and he said, "Atul, we're sorry, we can't accept you." And I said, "What happened?" He says, "Well, you got scoliosis, which is one of the vertebrae is misaligned, and therefore they felt that as a part of the training of the officers, you have to carry the weight for long periods of time, and they didn't think I could do it." And
Yeah, and those are the Sainik schools you were
Yes.
talking about? Okay,
Yeah.
they have very strict admission standards, and if you have flat feet,
Then
also
you
they
can-
don't take
right.
you in. And by the way, I heard you say that you were born in Porbandar, right?
Correct.
And that is the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi.
That is correct. That's the only connection I have with that place. Though. Other than that.
That is wonderful. And also true to, that fact, you have also been following Gandhiji's path, and by starting the Mahatma Gandhi Library in Houston.
Yeah, that was a different coincidence.
No, we are very happy for that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and now after Sainik school.
Yeah, so being rejected medically was disappointing at the time, but unfortunately what that into, when you think something is not good, is a blessing in disguise. So I had full 6 months to prepare for the IIT entrance exam, and fortunately I got admitted to the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, in 1969, and I did my BTech, Bachelor of Technology, in Chemical Engineering from there. And once you go there, the IIT Kanpur was in collaboration with the 9 top universities of the United States, such as MIT, Rice, and so on and so forth. So every student who goes there is dreaming of coming to the United States.
So stepping stone.
That is a stepping stone. So when I finished my bachelor's, I had applied to various universities here in the United States, and fortunately I got admitted to Technical Institute of New York. That's what it used to be called at point in time. Now it is called New York University. And I came there, did my master's in chemical engineering, and then, like most immigrants, apply, but no reply. And so we were thinking what to do. So some of my friends from back home in IIT Kanpur, they were doing their masters here in University of Houston. Say, come on over and try over here and see if you get a job. And I said, okay. I came down here, and I still remember leaving New York, John F. Kennedy Airport, I mean, fully lighted in the night and glowing with lights and everything. And then
Which year was that?
This was in 1975, December.
Okay.
And then the pilot announced we are about to land in Houston. I looked down, there are no lights. I can't see, it was so dark, pitch dark, because the airport at the time, now of course the Houston is dark, a lot more around airport, but at the time there was not much development. And I said, where have I come? But it was great that I came down here. I've loved it ever since. And I love the weather. I know it's hot and humid,
Yes.
but I take that any day for the cold and wintry and snowy and other kinds of weathers, and then go from there. So that's in a nutshell is my background coming from India. And if I had to tell something about my family, I was the youngest in a family of 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and that was, or plus and minuses, as you know, being the youngest. So, but you know, it worked out, and came on over since then.
Wonderful. So, was your transition to America smooth?
Yeah, it was relatively smooth, because when I landed in New York, my elder brother was there already in New York, so it wasn't too bad. But I heard a lot of things regarding the South, that, you know, the Texans carry the big hats and the guns and everything, and but I had overall a totally different experience. I found the people in Texas to be very hospitable. There are issues, just like any other place. Enforcement officials are different from the regular folks and so on and so forth. But other than that, I didn't feel anything different. One thing you find different also is being a vegetarian. Whenever you go, for example, job interviews or something, the guy's looking at you, what's wrong with you? Only thing you're eating is salad. And how would this guy fit into my organization if he's not eating barbecue like most Texans do? So, but no, that's part of the life. I mean, I'm sure back home, when we looked at different people of different religions, colors, and race, and like our next door neighbor was from South India, and he would wear lungi and say, oh, what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
So other than that, I mean, I personally haven't come across
No problem.
any kind of major issues of discrimination or being treated differently or anything like that. If anything, I found the people to be very nice, very hospitable, very friendly. They are outgoing, they want to learn. Okay, I'm sure there are cases where they don't, but the experience I have had have been where the people have been open-minded regarding who you are, what you do, how you do, and so on and so forth. And since you mentioned Mahatma Gandhi, I mean, us of Indo-American, Indian background, a large number of people, not only in the United States, but all over the world, because of him, hold us in very high regard and respect us.
Okay. Now, Rita ji, tell me something about your background in India. How you got married to Atul, and was it an arranged marriage? And tell me something about your family, your children, where they were born, etc.
I was born in Mumbai, 1955, and went to school and did my BCom from HR College of Commerce over there. And then I did my law school at Government Law. 1977, our marriage was arranged, and got married and came to Houston at that point in time. My dad is a doctor, and my mother was a housewife, yeah. We are 3 sisters and 1 brother. And in Houston, I came to Houston in 1977. We have 1 son. His name is Vivek.
Born in this country?
Born in Houston.
In Houston? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And he graduated from Brown with public policy and computer science major, and did his law school at Stanford. And he is now a federal prosecutor in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, great. Very highly accomplished son you have. And also you are an empty nester now.
We are empty nesters. He got married about 2 years ago.
Okay. Grandkids?
No grandkids
Not yet.
yet.
Waiting.
Dividend is not there.
Yeah,
So,
wonderful. So you are also actively involved in the community, along with, of course, Atul wouldn't leave you otherwise.
No, she has no choice. So.
No choice. So tell me, how are you? I know that by profession, I see your ads in the paper that you are a CPA, and I heard you earlier say that you went to Kanpur, IIT, and you are a BTech person, right? And from engineering, you transitioned to accountancy. When did it happen?
Yeah, what happened was, to come here to study engineering, everybody had to take the GRE examination. For some reason, I don't know, for some strange reason, I had interest on the business side of the industry as well. So at the time, to study in MBA program, one had to sit for what is called ATGSB, which is now called GMAT. So I had taken the GRE and ATGSB at the same time. So through GRE, I got admission, as I said, into master's program in New York. And then when I came to Houston, see, the exam that you take is valid for 2 years. So the 2-year limit was expiring out to do my MBA. So I went to University of Houston, gave my ATGSB score, I got admitted and everything. And what happens is, during the first semester, we are supposed to take 1 course in every different discipline, such as accounting, statistics, finance, marketing, organization, behavior management, and so on and so forth. And I loved the finance and accounting courses. Especially in accounting, I was taking accounting course for the first time in my life at a graduate level. And my fellow students already had bachelors in accounting. They were working as accountants somewhere else. And I used to sit there in class and say, why do they teach this? I mean, it's so obvious. There is no need to teach this, you know. And I maxed all the exams and got straight A's and so on and so forth. So at the end of the first semester, we had to decide which area do you want to specialize it in. So based on my engineering background, obvious choice would have been what it used to be called quantity management, or industrial engineering is what it is called right now. But for some strange reason, some thought came to my mind that since I love these other courses, why don't I go to the Career Placement Center and see if they can help me make a decision. So I go there and say, well, listen, we can't give you any particular advice like this or that or whatever, but we have a couple of aptitude tests you can take and see where your interests lie. So I took those tests, the results came back. The first test was, the top interest was in being in law, and second was CPA. The second test came back and he said number 1 CPA and number 2 attorney. So I was not prepared to spend another 3 years going to law school. So I decided to focus into accounting, and that's how I then passed my CPA exam, also soon after I finished my MBA. And that's my first job was into corporate planning also. And that's why I just stayed there, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it. I'm glad I made the switch, I know it sounds strange, having spoiled a seat for an institution like IIT,
Yes.
and then moving on to do the CPA.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that was not under my control. I love the topic. I still enjoy going to work.
And you have become successful
Yeah.
in your profession in Houston.
Right.
You are one of the noted CPAs.
Well, I mean, coming from Indian background,
Yeah.
you are bound for success.
Yeah. Exactly. Engineers cannot
Right,
fail. They are
right.
good. I have come across engineers going into medicine
That's
also,
all.
and they are successful doctors.
Right.
Similarly, your transition has paid off very well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And you are also, I know that since I know you for so many years, one day I met you and you said you are leaving Houston and going back to India for good.
Mhm.
That really surprised me, and I even persuaded you. I said, Atul, people whom I know, they went and came back, and you proved me right. Tell me what happened. How did it happen?
Well, it's the itch you could call, And
Itch.
there is something in your mind, and you've got to check it out.
Yeah.
Okay? And yeah, you're absolutely right. The odds were heavily against it. Okay, there's no doubt about it. But you simply can't look at the odds. You just have to go and try it yourself. Okay. Because each case and circumstance is different, what happens, why, and so on and so forth. So we went down there. I mean, it was quite a transition, especially for Rita. She had to leave her job and everything. And
After 23 years in Exxon, right?
Exxon.
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 And you had to go back to India after that, it's a big shock. too.
Especially Ahmedabad, because I was
raised in Mumbai,
I
and
was
she knew
born
nobody.
and raised in Mumbai, so I didn't know anything about Ahmedabad.
Exactly. And how long you tried India?
We were almost there for 3 years, almost 3
3
years.
years.
Mhm.
Okay. That is a good time. Either you make it or break it.
Break it, yes.
So finally you decided to come back again.
Yeah, because the plans I had in mind to do activities related to Mahatma Gandhi received a very cool reception. And then, I mean, I could have struggled and kept doing it, okay. But then I said, rather than just sitting around and not doing anything, why not go back to Houston where such activities have already been started and they were still ongoing, and we continue with that effort rather than try to start something from scratch over there. So that was the main reason we came back.
Let me
But
tell you,
more
we missed you during that time.
No,
3
more
years.
importantly, I wanted to
Yes.
prove you right. And many others.
No,
and many others.
I was surprised when you came back, and you are right. I had experienced that myself. I went to England and went to India, and then finally after 6 years I tried, and then I decided I better leave again and came back. That is my history.
Right.
But yeah, your story is also fascinating because you were successful in this country, and you wanted to go back and start all over again in India. And that's
Well, it's a fairly simple philosophy. I mean, at least from my perspective, every person has 3 mothers. Okay, one is the mom who gives the birth, and for whom people sacrifice their lives to do and take care of her, and so on and so forth. Other one is the land on which you are born, which is called motherland, for which also people are prepared to give their lives.
Mathrubhumi.
Mathrubhumi.
Yes.
Okay. And the third one is as I look at it, the mother tongue, which many people don't realize. And in fact, I was really surprised to know when I was back home, during the period when I was trying to resettle back home in Ahmedabad, there was some celebration of Bangladesh's independence anniversary. And for some reason, Gujarati Kavi Sammelan or somebody, they also were observing it. And I asked them why. I mean, it's a different country, and why are you observing it? As it turns out, okay, that one of the major factors after Bangladesh's freedom struggle from Pakistan was the language. They were being forced to do everything in Urdu, whereas their mother tongue was Bengali.
Yes.
And that's what they didn't like. And that was one of the major factors, besides many others, why Bangladesh wanted freedom from Pakistan. And that's the only country that I know of has fought a struggle for independence based on love for their mother tongue. Okay. So when you look at it, these three things, I mean, I have gained a lot from my motherland, my education, the reason why I came here, everything was because of that. Because both my educations at the Sainik School and at IIT were pretty much free. It was all paid for by the government. So I had a debt to repay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, more than anything else, and which I still have not been able to repay.
Okay. Yes, very true. Now, this integration into the Main Street in America, you tell me something about it, your activities and your contribution to this country, socially, economically, politically, anything. Which are you involved in many mainstream organizations in this country, in Houston?
Yeah, just to give you background, I was very fortunate that when I was doing my MBA, I had some fellow students who were not Indians or from other country, okay, and I formed very good friendships with many of them. And one of them was instrumental in getting my first job, a girl by the name of Melchior. She was from Luxembourg. And she referred me to what then used to be called Coastal Corporation, which is now called, I think, the name will come to me, El Paso Engineer Company. And I was very fortunate that the first job I got also, my boss was from Kansas. He had moved to Houston, okay, and I mean, there was not a trace in him that Atul is from a different country and his accent is different or whatever, that he should be, I mean, he was like a friend to me. And in fact, I still remember we both sat for the CPA exam, and at that time we had to go to Galveston because there was no center in Houston at the time. And so we drove down there, we took the exam together, and I still remember the day the results were out, because very few people passed CPA exam on the first attempt at that time, because we had to take all parts together. It's a different story. So Jim went, because his home was very close from the office. So he went for lunch and he came back and said, Atul, I didn't make it. I said, uh-oh, because I knew the results were waiting for me in the mailbox when I reached home. And I still remember reaching home and Rita was with me. I said, Rita, you open the envelope. I'm not going to open the envelope, okay? And fortunately I did pass. And I was promoted in the company and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I didn't have, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I didn't have much difficulty, if any, in terms of integrating into the society. And of course, still, in terms of socially or whatever, I don't have too many friends in terms of the foreign background or different culture. I mean, I know them, but I probably don't meet with them on a weekend for a party or anything like that, because most of them either moved out of Houston and so on and so forth. So, but in the sense of overall fitting into the society, it's not just a question of making friends. The way the society works, so for example, you know, in India we try to cut every possible corner because things are scarce, and that's what is inculcated into every child. And that was with us also. But we have slowly learned to let go a little bit. The principle is not wrong. The question is how far you carry is the issue. And so that way of integration in the society takes a little time because you've grown up in a certain way and fashion, and now you see plethora of choices and resources and so on and so forth. And but thank our parents and our past generations and our ancient that they have inculcated these values into us. And we should be careful in terms of how we integrate into the society. Just don't adopt everything. Now, of course, there are good things. Like people here are always on time. There is no IST, no Indian Standard Time. That is the right time. This is the time you start. This is the time you're supposed to be there. Yes, that is something should be adopted. There is nothing wrong with it. Other thing you feel here, see here, there is at a low level especially, there is little or no corruption. All right. So therefore, if you are ever in a position where you are compromising, ask yourself, should you do it? Shouldn't you learn that from the new society where it is not? Okay. Just because we come back from back home, it is very prevalent. It was then, it is now, and so on and so forth. So the question is, what am I doing to change myself for good in that sense? So that is the kind of integration I'm looking at it. I'm not looking at simply because they are drinking, I drink, or they are eating. No, there are values we have which are excellent, and we should never give up any and all circumstances. But there are things for improvement in everybody. So look for those and ask yourself every night, how much have I made progress in that direction? So in that sense, I believe we have integrated very well into the society here in terms of adopting what is good here and holding on to what we believe is good from back home and from our ancient culture.
Do you have any concerns about the second generation Indian boys and girls becoming, Americanized very fast and forgetting their roots?
Probably won't forget the roots. It's deep inside of you, but since they're born here and brought up here, they are exposed to more of the American culture and way of life. So.
But you have no concerns about that?
Well, it's like not that much, but a little bit, for sure. But I'm sure the second, third generation will lose a lot more than the first generation.
Now let's talk about what does Americanization mean. Okay, if Americanization means that they are not going to be spendthrift, yes, it would concern me. If Americanization means, which is happening to a lot of children, they eat meat, fish, and so on and so forth, yes, that is concerning to me. Okay. If it means, on the other hand, to be truthful, then it doesn't bother me. That is good. There's nothing wrong, whether you call it Americanization or whatever you want to call. That is something excellent. Okay. To be bold, to take on challenges. I mean, when you look at our children, if we compare to the lives we had, compared to the lives they had over here, it is a night and day difference. We were very protected. We had very limited exposure to the rest of the world. So in that sense, but that is pluses and minuses. Okay, exposure also could mean they could be misled. Okay, and therefore the protection is needed. So there is no right balance anywhere. Okay, but whatever it is, these are the facts. They've been born here. This is their motherland now. Just like we were born back home. Okay, that is our motherland. But their motherland is now America.
Sure.
And they are supposed to serve them. So now, but it's an interesting question that you asked because I had grappled with that question myself. And that was one of the genesis for forming the Mahatma Gandhi Library. That what happened is they are going to be Americanized. There is no one, I believe, can do anything about it, no matter how hard you try. Because that's what they're exposed to. So the language they may speak may not be our mother tongue. The clothes that they wear may not be the clothes we wore back home. Okay? They may not act the way we did. They may not touch your feet or anything. That's a different story. However, as Rita said earlier, deep-rooted, which I interpret as that genes cannot be changed. Since the genes cannot be changed, their perspective on life and in general cannot be changed. So we have seen here that political scene, there is so-called right and the left. There is nothing in between. and it has been existing for quite a while now. I mean, there's no compromise that we need to do something different, or maybe other parties a little bit right, let's look at what's right, adopt that. Now, each one is taking a polar position. I'm right and you are wrong. The other party is saying, I'm right and you are wrong. This is where I believe our generation, our Indo-American next generation, is going to be asking itself, where do I fit? Where do I belong? Where do I go for guidance? Because my feelings are something different from what intellectually I'm being told, okay? And this dilemma, if they study someone like Mahatma Gandhi, it'll help them settle that dilemma. And that was one of the main reasons behind forming. But then we, of course, it has evolved a lot more since then. It is just not the Indo-American children benefiting from it. It is any child is going to benefit tremendously because his philosophy is so simple. And we'll get into that later on if you need to. But in terms of Americanization, yes, there's nothing about, okay, let's talk about this. Our parents used to go to temple on a daily basis, they used to do the fast. Do we do that? No. They were worried about us as to what is going to happen to these guys. They are totally not religious people. Okay? We think we are turned out okay, maybe they may not approve. It's a different story. So this is, every generation is worried about the next generation in one way or the other, either in the form of religion, in terms of culture, in terms of different ways. But we have seen over thousands of years. It is not a matter of today. And if I may relate to one incident, at one time I had to travel from US to UK to Greece, then Greece back to UK and back to India. I pick a Wall Street Journal here in the United States while living here. Guess what the editorial was about? Oh, religion, our children are not religious. They are giving up religion and so on and so forth. Okay. I go to UK and I read, I believe, and if I remember the newspaper, I don't remember the newspaper right now, but it was same issue. Our children are not, they are living Christianity and this and that and whatever. I end up in India and read Times of India. Exactly the same thing. Oh my God, our children are no more religious. I mean, look at that, used to be arranged marriages, now they're love marriages and all sorts of things, drug use, they're going to all sorts of issues. So, of course, always, we now have experience, they don't. So we think we have the crystal ball to look at it and tell them, but no, they should be given the freedom to explore. Sometimes they'll get hurt, but that's part of growing up. Let them hurt. But their genes cannot change. And therefore, their perspective in general, there'll be, of course, distribution of any thinking, like a bell curve, some will be in the extreme, most of them in the middle, and so on and so forth. But that will not change. And the idea is to give them a solace that although you hear so much in the media and so on and so forth, war and this and that, if you are thinking it different, don't be afraid. There's nothing wrong with being different. Okay? And that's we should support them with more than anything else, rather than taking them to the task as to why are you Americanized? Why can't you be like us?
So you really not concerned about them being American-born, confused disease? Are they not confused
No,
between the two cultures?
no, there will always be some people. There is no doubt about it. It is going to happen. But that's expected. It is not something. And every parent tries to do his or her very best. And you just have to, whatever the outcome is, you have to accept it rather than regret that I didn't do a good job or this I should have done. Hey, you did the best based on the information you were at the time. If you didn't, that is a different story. Next time, do it. Okay? But regretting about it is not going to. Now, if you have made some errors, correct that, that's fine, and then go from there.
Now, talk about your project, which is, you started it, I guess. You are the main person who started this Mahatma Gandhi Library in Houston. Talk about it in the early stages and now where we are.
No, I mean, see, all of us who come from back home, at one point in time or other, the following thought passes through our mind, that at one time Bharat, India, was the center of the world. People used to come to us to gain knowledge, to gain wealth, and so on and so forth. And why all of a sudden the river started flowing in the opposite direction? What happened? Why? So the answer that I had was, for many years, was that science and technology is a branch primarily developed by the Western civilization, and we were into God and doing this thing, worshipping, and we got left behind, and people moved forward. Then one day all of a sudden a thought came to me, what is science and technology? Science and technology is nothing else but relentless pursuit of physical truth. So for example, Niels Bohr says atom consists of electron, neutron, and proton. As somebody else comes in and proves that there are quarks, subquarks, and so on and so forth, no matter how well respected Niels Bohr may be, the new truth is accepted, and they move on. So I said, if it is just a matter of truth, then who do I know, champion of truth? And then all of a sudden it hit me, Mahatma Gandhi. I was born in the town that he was born, I was raised in the town, and I remember for 1 year that I went to school in the city from the suburb where I was living. Every day the conductor would stop at the Gandhi Ashram, used to be on the way. Gandhi Ashram, and I would look around and say, hey, okay, yeah, he got his independence, and knew little or nothing about him. So that was the first time I went out to the library, got his autobiography, read his autobiography, and it went straight to my heart. I mean, I can't tell you anything. I'm a very poor reader, and this is one of the books which I picked up and never left off until I finished. Why? The reason behind that is, if you have a chance, read his autobiography, especially the first 3 pages of the introduction, and that's this where he talks about as to, I have been looking for him. By looking for him, he means the absolute truth. I haven't found it yet, he says. And then he goes in to say, while I'm looking for it, I must live by relative truth. What is relative truth? Relative truth is truth as every individual conceives. Every person's truth is different. Okay? But I must be prepared to give my life for it. So now let's take logically further. If I admit I don't know the absolute truth, okay, I may disagree with your belief system, but I have to respect it, because I have admitted I don't know the absolute truth. Maybe you know something that I don't understand right now. Maybe I'll understand later on, but I cannot say, hey, you are totally wrong and I'm right. You got to respect and believe what I'm saying. So now there is tolerance, that you respect other person's belief. Now let's take one step further. It's just a matter of time before which we'll come across somebody whose belief system is diametrically opposite from ours. And this is defined as conflict. This is where he swept me off my feet. He said, if there's a conflict, and if you are truly interested in changing the belief of the other person or other party or other nation, whatever you want to call them, there is one and only one way. And what is that way? I must suffer. I said, wait a minute, what is he talking about? I must suffer? And then he demonstrated. So if you look at Salt Satyagraha, if you look at there is a more original footage available on that, these were 2,000 people. They had no arms in their hands. Unfortunately, Gandhiji has been arrested the night before. British thought that the demonstration would fizzle. He had already instructed Sarojini Naidu to go and take the lead and carry out the demonstration. What did they have? They had 3 simple instructions. You will go in a team of 10 holding hands together, number 1. Number 2, when you reach up there, you look at your aggressor in the eye, because you love them. You don't hate them. Third, you'll be hit by a lathi, which has a razor sharp steel at the end of it, which can cut upon your skull and spine. But take the blow like a man, don't even flinch. Okay? 10 people go out there, they get all day long. There was a UPI reporter there at the time, whose dispatch went to 2,200 newspapers around the world. It was a very long dispatch describing the day's event. The critical sentence was the last sentence, and this is what it says: the West has lost any moral authority to rule anyone in the world today, because they ask themselves the following questions. Are we barbarians? All these people want is salt. They don't mean to harm or hurt you. And this is how we treat them? So the stench of violence is such, okay, that it changes that person. And since then, Dr. Martin for here, for the African American, the dogs were thrown at them, they were bombed, they were jailed, they suffered through everything. But through their suffering, they changed the minds of the majority. And that's why 65 legislation of the civil rights could be passed, because there were enough votes for that. And all this may sound theoretical, that only great people can do. Let me ask you this question, Krishna. Does not only question of carrying the child and delivery, raising the child. What happens when in case of stress, where does the child go? Child will run to the mother, because the child knows no matter what he or she has done, only thing the child can expect from mother is love.
Yeah, unconditional.
Unconditional love. No matter what you do, you're right. Okay? So that's why we got started into this.
Very good, and it is a very successful project, as you were mentioning earlier, outside this interview, that Mahatma Gandhi Library is buying land.
Yeah, in fact, it's a coincidence, you won't believe it. In fact, we are planning to close on the land this Thursday,
Okay.
and our focus has been primarily children, because we adults are gone cases.
Mm.
Our character was made when we were 10 or 12 years old. No matter what you do, it's not going to change. But we have hope with the next generation. Okay, so the idea is to ping them once a year through speech contest, essay contest, poster contest, multimedia contest, to ping them once a year with leaders of peace like Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King, Nelson Mandela, and there are many others around the world who all have credited Gandhiji with pioneering this technique.
Sure. And how big is this facility going to be?
We are planning to build a 5,000 square feet building for the Gandhi Library, and we have a lot of dreams. We'll see how many of them come true.
Yeah. First, it all starts with the vision and then the mission.
Right.
You know, I'm glad. Which area you have?
Okay, this is almost in Sugar Land. So those of you who are familiar with Sugar Land, there is Dallas High School. They are on the Dallas Avenue. It is almost across the street from there on the Stafford side of the road.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
It's going to be 1.2 acre piece of land.
Wonderful. What is the budget? Big? But
We budget, we don't know right now for sure, because there are many objectives we have in mind for the building, but one of the major objectives is to pay tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. We want to make sure that the building is LEED certified, which is built on green technologies such as the solar power, wind power, water harvesting, okay, insulation, okay, cross ventilation, and so on and so forth, such that it utilizes very little energy, so that when children come, that building itself is a lesson in terms of cutting down your consumption, sustainability, and so on and so forth, besides learning anything else about Mahatma Gandhi Library. So the range has ranged anywhere from about $150 per square foot to $200 per square foot. So that will be somewhere around $1 million is what we are looking at it. So Krishna, please, all your resources, and by tomorrow we should have the money in the bank, okay?
Yeah, definitely. This is sponsored, the main sponsor is the Gandhi Library?
Yes.
Or, you join hands with other groups?
No, we'll slowly start. Once we acquire the land, we are right now in the process of selecting the architect. So once the architect selected, we have the drawings and renderings, so we can present to the potential donors, because they like to see something more complete rather than just a concept.
Sure. And, well, you know, I keep reading in the papers that Gandhiji was he is a global person, obviously. He has been revered by so many other countries, including recently they installed a big statue in UK, London.
Parliament House.
But what I keep hearing is that in India, somehow the Gandhi's image or Gandhi respect for Gandhiji is slowly diminishing for some reason or other. It became political, and that is what the general impression is. In India, Gandhiji is not as much respected as in the outside the country. What do you say for that?
Well, in Gujarati we have saying, Dungar Durthi Radyamna, which means a hill looks beautiful from the far. Okay, so when you go close, that's when you find the shrubs and all sorts of flowers in the garden, in the hill. That is not as pretty. It is a little difficult task, okay? So what has happened with our motherland, Bharat, India, is the following. It is tremendously productive, okay, in terms of producing individuals who impact the world. So let's talk about, for example, Gautam Buddha. Okay. Rest of the world respects him, and there are a lot of countries, in fact Buddhist countries, but Buddha itself hasn't found that kind of grounding or following in our own country. Okay. Because the Hindu religion, based on what little I know very little, I just want let every viewer to know, I know little or nothing, okay, this is just my perception, okay. It's so deep-rooted and it's so philosophically strong, okay, that for some new philosophy to take root in that is almost impossible. Now let's look at Gandhi's situation. In my humble opinion, what he has done, that he has taken the absolute essence of the Hinduism and boiled down to two principles, which is practice your own truth while being non-violent. Practice your own truth while being non-violent. Okay? The problem is, a lot of people are misguided. They feel in order for them to practice their own truth, they must use violence. And this is the interesting point, that back home, in spite of the very rich heritage we have of the Shastras and Puranas and so on and so forth, this one simple principle of non-violence is very difficult for people to adopt. Okay? And that is the reason the Gandhian philosophy is going to take some time. But ultimately, again remember, Satya Mev Jayate. Truth will prevail. Okay? So, there are always ups and downs. This may be a down period, but as Gandhiji himself has said, the truth is such that it will speak even from my own graveyard. Okay? Nobody can stop the truth. And the truth remains, and that's what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who studied at Gandhi Ashram, has said, Gandhiji is inescapable. It is not a question of should, must, or what. In order for the world to live a peaceful, quiet life, that principle, simple to principle, practice your own truth while being non-violent, is inescapable. So it is just a matter of time before which we will realize back home. Okay, now let's go to the third issue. Because you and I, like Gandhi, we tend to think other people. We don't know that. Nobody has taken a survey, there are no hard facts. Just because the so-called right-wing politics have risen, it doesn't mean the Gandhian philosophy is dead. Okay? So that we should not jump to conclusion without having objective facts as to what is happening. Because Gandhians typically are going to remain silent. Gandhi was very good with media. He knew how to get his message out. But most peace leaders, peace lovers, they do not know how to do that. So it's, and quote again from Gandhi, somebody told him, Gandhi, what are you talking about, this non-violence? Tell me in history, has anybody gained independence through non-violence? You know, guess what was his reply? He says, why are you studying history? History is made of isolated incidents. So for example, in Houston, we have hurricanes that come. So we all remember, you know, this hurricane I suffered. We forget that out of the 365 days, hurricanes come maybe once every 10 years or 5 years. But we talk, oh, Houston is hurricane prone. Don't go there. We forget the rest of the time is peaceful. The ocean is peaceful most of the time. But we talk about the events which is not what is generally followed in the world. So peaceful existence is far more prevalent than the non-peaceful.
Wonderful. We only have a few more minutes. Just I want to ask you, what are the issues that confront the Houston Indian community as you perceive?
The only issue I think Indo-American community in Houston faces is to realize how blessed they are. And they should figure out any number of ways to share this blessedness with those in Houston who are not fortunate enough to be so blessed. We are blessed in the sense that typically whoever is good at math is going to do economically well, just because that's what God gave them the genes to do that. Other people don't have that. So the question is, what we as Indian community have done for those who are less blessed to help them out in whichever way we can. Because if you don't, I don't think it's dire anything is going to happen. But typically we'll be looked at a community who doesn't know how to take care of the community at large. Okay, we may donate large sums to political movements and so on and so forth. Some of our people have risen politically and so on and so forth. But until we show that we understand the problems of an average person and we put our minds there, tan, man and dhan, which is our body, physical labor, our brains, and the so-called wealth that has been accumulated in our names for the benefit of the others. Until we do that, I would not call that we have reached a true success. Yes, economically we have succeeded, academically we have succeeded, but we have to show the other side of ours.
Absolutely.
That we still haven't done as much.
I fully agree with you. That's a great message. The community has to come out and share their successes with the rest of the have-nots and not so fortunate ones in the mainstream. I'm sure it will, show there are already organizations who are trying to do that. And we also notice that our second generation people they're not solely dependent on the parents, and they are on their own merit, they are doing great.
Yeah, very great.
So,
And they're doing a lot of public work, and hats off to them.
yes.
Absolutely.
With that closing sentence, I guess you have given a great interview, and we are thankful to you, Atul and Rita ji, and on behalf of the Foundation for India Studies, We thank you very much.
And Krishna, I just want to say thank you on behalf of both of us and Vivek for inviting us for this interview. And we wish Foundation for India Studies all the very best and all the success. Thank you.
Welcome.